Okay, in this video, let's try to build an Excel add-in or add-on, whatever they call this. And for this, we'll be using NodeJS and Visual Studio Code. And of course, we'll need Excel to test it. Now, this type of add-in should work in Excel, both Mac and Windows versions. It should also work on their web platform. So we'll be using JavaScript, HTML to do this. So the first thing I'm going to need here, I'm going to need, the docs. I have Visual Studio Code opened in a fresh new folder. There's nothing happening in here. So I'll just go ahead and have the terminal up and running. And we'll basically just go to the docs and scroll down. So as you can see, it says we're going to have to use this generator. Again, we're going to need Node.js installed, which I have a video showing you how to do that. So I'm just going to copy this command. Apparently, we need to install this thing called Yeoman or whatever that's called. So I'll just copy paste that installation command. That's a global installer, apparently. I'll fast forward to when it's done. So it seems like there was some sort of issue. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back and redo this. And on a Mac, I'm going to do sudo npm install the same command. If you're on a Windows and you get this, you will have to just run it as an admin. So again, wait until it's done. Hopefully this time, no errors. All right, so that went well. Now let's go back and see what's the next thing. So the next one is to create the project. So let's do that. So I'm gonna go and run this command. So that first command that I ran, you don't really have to do it all the time. You may need to do it once in a while to get it updated. But after that, this is really the command you need to run to actually generate the project. So again, some questions. I'm going to say no to this. Continue. So as you can see, we can use like React project, stuff like that. So let's just start by doing this regular project. And then the language, see we have TypeScript and JavaScript. So I'll do JavaScript for this. What do you want to name your add-in? We'll call it my test. I'm curious if this is just a regular name, so let's just try to do spaces and stuff. So and finally, which application this is for. So for us, that's going to be Excel. So it seems like it was created. Hopefully everything is fine. So at this point, see, it made this folder. It's called my test, and it seems to have all the code for this project in there. So I'm going to just make this folder the main folder. So I'll just go File, Open, and choose that folder. And there it is. That's the project that was created. So now that we have all of this, we're going to again open the terminal. And we're going to do npm install. And you have to do this while you're inside of this folder. And I'm going to assume you just do npm start to get this running, but let's just go and take a look at their docs. So it seems like it's saying that if we're on a Mac, which I am on a Mac, I should run this before I do npm start. I'm not sure if that's required, but I'm going to do that anyways. Okay, so I'm going to accept the certificate. Completed successfully. I'm going to do Control-C to get out of this. I don't know if we have to keep this running all the time. Hopefully not. I'll do Control-C, and then I'll get back to this and do npm start. Let's see what happens. Okay, so as you can see, it started Excel for me. And here I have this thing that says show task pane. And if I click on that, see it says welcome, there's a logo, there's something that says run. And when I click on it, nothing seems to happen, at least from what I can tell. But this is it. So we got this installed. Oh, actually, it looks like it made it yellow. Let's try to click here and click run here. See, it makes the cell yellow. Okay, basically this is our starter project. So let's go take a look what this whole thing looks like. So we have the main setup here. This is Webpack. I don't think we need to deal with this. Package JSON, which is basically everything that was installed, and all the dependencies are here at this point. So we're gonna skip all of this for now. Well, we have the node modules folder, which we don't have to deal with. We have the hidden VS Code folder, which has some sort of Visual Studio Code editor settings. The things that seem interesting here, it could be one here, assets. So here, see, we have some icons basically. So if you basically need some sort of image files, that seems to be going in here. And that was probably the file that was loading in here as a logo. So the main code is probably going to be here, src. So this is where we have our code, two folders here. One is task pane, the other one is commands. Let's explore those and see what's going on. So if we look at this task pane, see it has a CSS, which should be some sort of styles. It has HTML, which is basically, well, you can probably imagine what that's going to be. It's going to be HTML. That's pretty much probably going to be the user interface. We have, see, all the way down here, it says modify the source files, then click run. So that's probably the same as we have here. So basically this is this HTML file. And then we have the JavaScript file, which is this, which seems to have this onReady function. I guess that's similar to like when everything loads, then it basically goes and finds some elements on our page, makes this hidden, makes this displayed, and then it assigns an event listener for onClick for the run button to basically do this function called run. And that will be this run function right here, which is that function that when we click on that button, it makes the cell yellow. See that color yellow, all of that. So that's what's going on here. So this is pretty clear. So let's take a look what's happening here in this commands. So let's go to commands HTML. There is not much here other than, see, it's an empty body HTML. It has some sort of import of main JavaScript package or whatever we're going to call this. If I go to commands JS, there's nothing here on ready. Scroll down and see what's going on here. So for now, I'm just going to skip this. Then we'll figure out what this is for if we need it. Let's just go back to task pane. And this is basically our JavaScript and CSS. So let me just get rid of all of the CSS from here. We're going to save it. Then we'll go to this HTML file. And what we'll do, we'll basically just clear everything in the body section again. Hit save. This seems to import some sort of style sheet from Microsoft directly in there if you want to use it. And this links to our CSS file over here. More importantly than anything, it has this Office.js library. So right now, if I save this, go back, see, there's nothing in here because I basically just cleared everything in that HTML file. So let's start here by adding a basic button. And we'll just give this button some sort of ID, btn. We'll just call it click me. So at this point, we should have a button click me. So now that we have our button, let's go to our JavaScript side. And here, when that whole thing is ready, it runs all of these things. So I'm just going to get rid of those. I'm going to keep the if statement so that we run when ready. And then over here, we have the actual function that's going to run, which does some things that it does. So as you can see, it's an async function, which is fine. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to delete all of this. And we'll try to just get started from scratch. So we'll start by giving this function a different name. We'll just say write data. And here we're going to want to write data to Excel. Now we want this function to run when we click on this button. Now we're going to add an event listener for that. So I'll just go here and write when that's ready. We'll do document get element by ID. So basically just think about this as the DOM content ready sort of situation. When this is ready, we're going to trigger this. So when it's ready, we basically going to go get that element with the ID button, btn, which is this ID right here. And we're going to add an event listener, and on click event, we're going to run that function that's called write data. So that should trigger this function when we click on that button. Now, out of curiosity, let's just do console log. I want to see if this console logs actually show up anywhere, because we'll probably need them. So I'll just say console log hello. So at this point, I'm going to go back to this and click me. And let's see. View source code. So let me try to figure out how we get to console logs and get back to this. All right, so based on what I see, if you are on Windows 10, you should be able to install this extension on Visual Studio Code, Microsoft Office Add-in Debugger, and then use that to get your logs. For me, I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to go to this iPad and Mac section and debug on Mac and scroll down, and it says open the terminal and do this. So for me, this seems to be for Word. I'm working with Excel right now, so this should be the line. So I'm going to copy that, and apparently what this should do, if it works, let's just paste it in here. See this line. Now, if I go back, I may need to close and reopen Excel for this to work. So I'm going to go back and reopen. npm start. Get this thing running again. As you can see, it started Excel all over again. Now let's test this. So now, see, there's inspect element when I right click. And that should get me access to my console. Okay, cool. So now at this point, if I click me and go back and look at that console, see, it says hello in the console. So again, for Windows, it seems like you have possibly better ways of dealing with this. Nevertheless, it works. Now I get my logs. So now let's get to more interesting parts. So now we need to deal with our Excel applications. So if I'm trying to put some data in Excel, then I need to use this Excel global. And if I do that, let's see if we have autocomplete. It seems like we do. And there's all of the stuff. And the one they did use, I think it was something that was saying run. That's the method. So in this method, we basically have this callback function. Can we use the syntax? Hopefully we can. And here we basically accept this variable. They call it context. You can call it anything you want. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to use the same name they have. And basically on that variable now inside of this, we should have different methods that will allow us to hook into that Excel instance. See, we can get to that application, we can get to the workbook itself, and there are all these things. So workbook should refer to the current workbook. So if I do workbook, that should now refer to our basically this currently open file. So inside of that workbook, now in a workbook, we have worksheets, right? Let's try to get to our worksheets. See, we have this worksheets in this. Now, there could have been something like get active sheet or something directly on the workbook. Let's try to see if that's available. Now it says get active cell, but not active sheet. All right, fair enough. So let's go to worksheets. And here, see, we can do add. So that should allow us to basically create a new worksheet. But there's also this get active worksheet. So as you can imagine, that will get us an active worksheet. And this one is a method. So we're going to do this. So it says gets the currently active worksheet in the workbook. Good. Let's save this in a variable. So now we should have this WS variable that should be our worksheet. And in that worksheet, we have, see, there's different methods again. So I'm just going to do get range A1 colon A2. So that should be the range. Let's save this in a variable too. Now in this range, now you can see this is starting to look a lot like Google Apps Script code. So in this range, now we're going to basically start to modify our values. See, we have, there it is. We have values, and that's a property. See, these are methods. This icon over here, so that's with parentheses. Properties would just be like this, values. I guess we should just be able to set it to something. So we'll just pass an array. So I'm trying to do A1, A2. So that would be, let's zoom in here. It would be like this, these two cells. So it should be array of arrays now. So if I do this, so that would be 2 rows separated by a comma. And for this one, I'll do 44. For this one, I'll do 77. That's the value in that row. Now, usually when you deal with this, according to their docs that I've read so far, you have to do this context sync to basically sync whatever you're doing here with whatever's in the actual application. But out of curiosity, I'm not going to do this. Let's just comment this line for now and save and try to click and see if anything happens. So I'm going to save this, go back. And let's just click on this click me. So nothing. So this doesn't do anything so far. Let's see if console says anything. So done method didn't return a promise. So we get an error. Okay. And that's where we need to return this. So basically, when we run this Excel run and we have this callback function, we have to return that context.sync in the end to get this to sync with our application. So let's save this, go back, restart this, I guess, and click me. And as you can see, I was able to write those values to my spreadsheet, 4477. Now, if we're trying to write to something like this from A1 through C2, then it's going to be pretty straightforward. We'll just do this. And then we now have 2 rows, 3 columns. So Each column will be comma separated here. I'll do some text values here too. And this will be the second row. So just some random things I'll put in here for now. So this will be our array of arrays. We can do it like this to make it easy to read. And basically that's the array. We have 2 rows and each row has 3 columns. So if I save this, we go back and click on this. See, we got this data in our spreadsheet. So this allows us to write to our spreadsheet. Now, if you're writing to a single cell, I don't know if there is a range.value. No, there's values. So I guess what you would do when you're just trying to write to a single cell, if we're trying to write to, let's say, D7 cell, then we need to pass still array of arrays structure, but it's just going to be a single column and a single row. Like this. So now this should allow me to write to that D7 cell. Let's go back, click on this. See, there it is. The last thing I want to try is what happens if we actually pass a JavaScript date. So I'm going to save this, go back, click on this. And apparently that came here as a string. Okay. So it's not going to convert JavaScript dates automatically to Excel dates for us. Okay, so now that we know how to write to the spreadsheet, let's actually read from the spreadsheet as well. Now, one thing I want to do, I want to make that button a lot bigger. And for that, we'll use that CSS file. And we'll just make the buttons in general larger font. Some padding. There's our button. Now let's create a second button. So this first button writes to the spreadsheet. So we're going to go to our HTML. This was the button. I'm going to just say write to sheet. And we'll copy paste and create a second button. I'll call this btn2, some ID. And this one will say read from sheet. And now we need to assign an event listener to this button btn2. So we'll go back to our JavaScript and create another line like this. Copy paste this btn2, add an event listener on a click event. We'll just create a new function. I'll call it read data. And then what I'll do, I'll just basically copy this, paste it right below, call it the right name, which is the name that I did for that callback over here. So that now is going to be the function to run when we click on that read data. And again, what I'll do, I'll get the active worksheet. Then I'll get a range. So let's just do something like A1 through B3. So that would refer to this. And then now we're not going to be writing to the spreadsheet. We need to get the values from that spreadsheet. Now, I don't know if that's automatically going to be available right away or not. So this is where we're going to use some console logging to figure this out. So I'm just going to try to console log this range values and see if there's anything in it. And if there isn't, we'll see how we're going to get that. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to save this, go back to this, click on read from sheet, and open my console, inspect to see what I got. So we get an error. It says the property values is not available. Can I zoom in on this? See, it says the property values is not available. Before reading the property's value, call the load method on the containing object and call context sync. So it's something with a load method. This is where we should go back to the docs and see what's going on. So let's try to find Excel JavaScript API. Well, I guess we need to first look inside of that range object. There it is, range object. And see, that should give us that range. Now on that range, do we have something like load? Methods. See, there's calculate. These are all methods we can use on that. But we're trying to find something that's called load. There it is. See, load options. So let's try to open this and see what it says. You must call context sync before reading the properties. Scroll down, see example. Okay, let's see what they do. So we have the sheet, we have the range. See, we get the range, and then we do range load cell counts. And then they do return, and then they have that available. Okay, I think I know what we need to do. I think we need to do this pattern. So let's just copy that. Go back to our code. Let's just paste it over here. And in our case, this will be values. I'm going to get rid of this. So we need to load the values, and then we're going to do this. Now, for us, this is going to be this context. And we're going to do that sync, which is basically like this. So we return that, and then we do the rest of the stuff. Okay, so then we don't need this anymore. So after we do this context.sync, then we get our callback, which should have our values in here. So I assume with this, I should be able to now get those values. I'm going to save this, go back, and we're going to click read from sheet. I'm going to open the logs. Let's see if we get errors. It doesn't look like we got errors this time. See, it says an array, and it's an array, these two rows, and we have this empty row. So there it is. We're able to read the data from our spreadsheet. Fair enough. So now we got our values from here. So if we wanted to get other things other than values, do we have to call them as a separate line? Let's see what else is available here. So we'll do range dot column count, for example. So that, I guess, means we have to do load column count, and then here should be able to do column count. So let's save that, go back and see what happens. Does that output both of them or not? So I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to go read. So yes, see, we got 2 and we got this. So anything we need to get, we need to basically use this load first to get those properties. And then after that, we're going to go inside of this callback and take care of that. Now, what if we try to do async await here to make this a little easier to read? So instead of having all of this like nested stuff, what if I just do this, remove all of this, and then return that, let's call it CTX. Let's see if this works. So I'm going to save this, go back. Let's just save this again. Unexpected reserved word await. Why is it unexpected? I think it could be because here I should have done async function. Aha, there it is. Okay, great. So this will clean up this whole thing a lot. So we don't have to do that crazy stuff. So every time basically we want to update our context, we have to do this thing. So which tells me we could probably also, instead of saving this in a new variable, do we even need to do that? What if we just do this and then in the end, we return that context, which is this original variable from there. So let's save this and test this and see what happens. No errors. Click read again. That works. Awesome. So now that cleans up this a lot. So basically what we're going to have to do, we're going to have this pattern of async functions. And every time we need to grab some data from the spreadsheet, we're just going to run this. And then in the end, we're just going to return this. And this way we now have information to work with. So at this point, I'm just going to remove this columns thing because I don't care about it. But what we should be able to do, we should be able to now work with this range.values. And that should be an array of arrays. So let's just change something about it and write it back to the spreadsheet. So I'll just do a map function to just iterate through that array of arrays. And what I'm getting right now is basically this. Actually, it's this much. So what I'll do, I'll just add a character somewhere in there just for testing. So I'll go back in here and do for each R, for each row. What we'll do, we'll take each row information and we'll map through that too, which will be another array. And for each column in this, return. And what I'll do, I'll just take the word hello with a dash and I'll concatenate it with that column value. And we'll also need to return this. And we need to save this in a variable like that. And at this point, we should have an array of new results that has this hello dash in front of every single value from that spreadsheet. And then let's now write it back to the spreadsheet, which we should be able to do by simply just doing range.values equals to our new values. Hopefully I got this whole thing right. Let's just do our semicolons, I guess, to be nice about this. Save that, and let's see if this works. So I'm going to save it, go back to this, no errors. So this is what I have right now in here. If I click read from sheet, see, it read it, and we have hello dash in front of all of it. If I run it again, it should add another one. See, now we have double hello dash. So there it is. Now we're able to read and write to our spreadsheet, which means now we can start interacting with our HTML side in more interesting ways. So for example, we can add an input box here. So I'll just go in here and add an input box. Type text. And we'll add some sort of ID to this so we can actually find that input. And I also want to make this input larger because now see, it's this tiny input. So I'll just go to my CSS. And actually just let's use exactly the same stuff right in here for that input too. So now it should be a lot bigger, see? And what I want to do, I want to be able to type something in here, click on write to sheet and put that in our spreadsheet. For that, we're going to use that write function. See, write data. And we could probably wrap it in a form or something like that, but here I'm not going to do that. What I'll do, I'll just grab the value from our input element. So right now, see, it just goes to D7 and writes the value. That's the new date. So I'm going to replace this to be the value that comes from that box. So let's just create a variable here. So we'll do document.getElementById. We'll get that IMP. Again, that's the ID of this input right here. We'll get the value from it, and that will be our new value. And then we'll just pass it right in here in this array of arrays. So if I save this, go back, type something, click write to sheets, see, it basically puts that value right in there. If I type this number, click, that should be in here. We just can't see it. There it is. So now we have this input element. We can write something and put it in a spreadsheet. Now I'm curious if there is some sort of like append row sort of method. So let's try to see. I'm going to take the worksheet. Let's see. Doesn't look that way, so maybe we just have to do the old style. Actually, this is get range. So we'll just take the A1 cell, and then let's see if we can do get last cell. What does that give us? Get the last cell within the range. For example, B2 to D5, it gives us D5. That's not what we want. See, it says get last row. Okay. So what does that give us? Guess the last row within the range. For example, B2 to D5 is B5 to, well. Okay, so let's see. So we have get used range. Considers only cells with values as used cells. So I guess we could just do the whole column A like this, and then do get used range in that column. And presumably if we have the whole column, the used range would be like this much. And then on that, we can get the last row. And can we do offset from this? Get offset range. After we found the last one, we need to go to the next one down. 1 row and 0 columns, and that will give us that new range, basically the cell where we need to write the values. And we'll do values equals to new val, which is all of that. So let's actually just save this in a variable. So I'll just get rid of this and put it right in here. And then I don't need this values part. So let's see if this works, and then I'll go over this again to explain you how exactly I got to this. So I'm going to save this, go back, and let's just type something and click write to sheet. See, it went right in here. If I do another one, write to sheet, it went to the next row down. Yep, it works. So basically, I'm able to write to the next cell down. And what I did here, basically, I grabbed the whole column A, and in this column, we're finding what we call used range. What's the part of this that is still not blank? So the used range will go until here at this point. So if I go back and take a look, see, I get the whole column A and get used range in that column A, which is basically going to give me until here. And inside of this, we find the last row is this. So that's the part where I get the last row. And then from that last row, I'm doing an offset of 1 row down, 0 columns, left and right. So 1 row offset would go to the next row over here. So this is how we find this next cell in this column. And then that will give us the range, and to that range, we'll write the values that we get from the input box. The rest is pretty much the same thing as it was before. If I save it, it works. Now let's just test that with B column too, out of curiosity, how this works. So save that, go back, type some number, hit write to sheet, and see now it goes through this, finds the used range here, and it just works. I'm curious what happens if we do some blanks. It should go below that. Write to sheets. Yep, it does. Excellent. So there it is. That should give us already a good starting point to see how this whole thing works. So we're able to set this up as a project. We're able to write to our spreadsheet, read from our spreadsheet, and we're also able to communicate with our HTML. And that should do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.